Good morning, everyone. Or afternoon, depending where you're at. Afternoon here, so might as well be afternoon where you are, right? Good to see you here. I guess maybe good for you to see me. I don't know how that works. That's all right. Uh, for those of you that can't read or I can't point, my name is DJ Eshelman, and yeah, today we're going to be talking more about Mental Illness Awareness Week. This is something that's going on all this first week of October, first week of every October here in the U.S. and in other select countries around the world. But the main thing to get out of today is that we're going to be talking about anxiety, and it's a topic that is uh, difficult in some ways because people can get a little paranoid about being paranoid is the best way to describe it. And so I wanted to lay out some things just to hopefully be helpful about how to kind of expose some of the stigma and dismissism that goes in. Is dismissism a word? It is now. It's officially a word right now. Dismissism that goes into dealing with people with anxiety, and it can be even more frustrating for those that know people that struggle with anxiety than it is for the people struggling with anxiety. So I wanted to outline a few things about that and go from there, but about some personal experiences and why there's a difference between having anxious thoughts and anxious spells and being anxious a lot, which leads to a condition of anxiety. Again, we don't want to stigmatize and we don't want to make a disorder an identity. And so we'll say, just like we said yesterday about depression, anxiety is a condition, not an identity. And so we need to be clear about that. So a little bit of background for those of you that weren't watching yesterday's stream, which you totally should. I don't have any links, but you can find it, right? I'm pretty easy to find stuff with. But the thing we talked about yesterday was depression, and so today we're talking about anxiety. But wanted to lay out, just like I did then, that I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a doctor, I'm not fully qualified to diagnose or treat anything. I'm just some dude that just happens to have a degree in psychology 20 years ago. Here, let me show you. So this says Bachelor of Arts. This does not say I'm a doctor. So just so you know, when I'm saying these things, it's somebody who's studied this and knows, but not well enough to diagnose anyone or say anything like that. It's just more of just a general caring and wanting to get us all a little bit better about dealing with these things. And so I'm going to check something just really quick on my end. I apologize for the hopefully brief delay. I just noticed that I'm using a microphone I didn't want to use. So what I'm going to do is change that. So hopefully this will have a higher sound quality, be a little more clear. It's a slightly more expensive microphone. So, but we'll go from there. So anyway, if you're here with me live today, feel free to say hello. If not, that's fine. I'll try and catch replay or any comments in the replay and that sort of thing. But I wanted to start out with actually just showing you something really quick to give perspective. And that is the shirt that I'm wearing today. Actually, it's let me widen my field of view here and I'll show you the back of this shirt. Hopefully you can. I'll have to look back at that afterwards and see if that came out clearly. But the shirt says "Fear is a liar," and the reason I say that fear is a liar is because fear is a liar, and I believe that fear is something that is placed on us incorrectly. And if we have time today, I might even get into some of the things about fear that, from a biblical perspective, and why I think that anxiety is something we need to be dealing with, because it's something that is caused by and amplifies fear. And so that's why I want to talk about that. Let's get into some of the generalized anxiety stuff here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen again, and I'm actually going to not pretend to be the expert that's saying this. I'm going to let the experts actually show you, what is true here. So I haven't read the official diagnosis
guidelines for 20 years. And so what usually happens with these kind of things is I read through these and I'm like, is that true? But generally speaking, we'll go through this and see what we can find out here. So basically, when it's just a generalized anxiety disorder, this is a relatively new concept when it comes to this. And this is because for a long time, anxiety of this order was kind of misdiagnosed as schizophrenia. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is that sometimes it'll be a irrational fear of something that's not there at all. And that becomes really hard to diagnose when it comes to schizophrenia. There's various levels. Whereas, years and years ago, everything was just, kind of pretty much lumped in with schizophrenia if you had any kind of any dissociation with reality. And so a lot of people that were essentially bipolar or manic, or had these kind of anxiety disorders were often misclassified as schizophrenic and treated not badly all the time, but in some cases, treated badly as in not cured. So understanding what anxiety is specifically and what the disorder is specifically is helpful for us to understand more about it and how this relates to those of us that have experienced these emotions of fear and anxiety versus those that are actually dealing with this in their daily life, and kind of how to know the differences and how to help interact with those people as people instead of just a disorder. So this is a key here, and this is something that I remember taking away from a lot of the courses and whatnot in my studies and my it's not a dissertation, it's a thesis. Be careful about that. I'm not a doctor, but I did have a thesis that's centered around this. And one of the things that is really key when it comes to diagnosing an anxiety disorder is the length of time that it's been occurring without any kind of a stop or let up. In this case, it would appear that the current DISM is 6 months, which I actually would agree with. I think that's good. I think it used to be longer, if I'm not mistaken. I could be. I'm sure somebody will probably correct me at some point, but the length of time is important because we all have times when we feel anxious. We all have these times of just generalized anxiety that things aren't right with us, that sort of thing. And so I want to paint the picture correctly of it not being a what do you want to say here? It's I don't want to say what it's not. Let's say what it is. And it is a longer term, I can't seem to get out of this kind of a thing, instead of just I'm worried about my finances, or I'm worried about this and that, the other. This is much more substantial. And so some of the symptoms are the same. And this is why I wanted to bring this up, is because you have these kind of things that they can look like other things. They can look like depression. They can look like just, I'll give an example. I've talked about this publicly, so I can talk about this here as well. At one point in my life, recently, or last few years anyway, I was fired from a job for something that I had done that didn't know that was really something wrong. It wasn't like morally wrong or anything like that. It was just something where I thought I had permission to publish something that I didn't. And so for a good many, I would say a month and a half or something like that, had a lot of these kind of symptoms because I was so worried that something worse than being fired was going to happen to me. Grace of God and people that are still friends with me to this day that were involved, that didn't happen, thankfully. But it doesn't mean that, we talked about depression yesterday. We talked about the feelings of, oh my gosh, I was so stupid, I can't believe I did that. That still happens. I still get that feeling, like deep in that part of the gut is where it kind of expresses itself, that you have that. And so anxiety is similar to that, but it usually ends up being that on edge thing where you're looking for the trouble. You're looking for the reasons to justify that. you have these inability to control that worry, to say, no, it's okay. Or, maybe that's not such a big deal. I'm bringing this up today a lot because these are the kind of things that I see a lot of in our society right now. I see a lot of, people worried about, and I'm not going to say the words. I'm not going to get onto, you know, those lists or whatever that are going on right now, as far as the when your words are being twisted or sometimes just categorized. Thanks for what you're saying, because the transcription is going on. It's a thing that I've proven it's true. It's not just a paranoia thing. It's just like something that's actually a benefit in my case, of somebody who's a content creator. I know that I can say the right keywords and get in front of the right people. It can be a positive thing, but it also means that there's certain things that we're talking about in society lately that cause this nonstop feeling of that. And so these kind of things can actually accelerate that. And so I want to take it head on, but not take it head on, if that makes sense. So there's these feelings of worry that we have, that there's more going on than we think, and there's conspiracy theories and things like that. They go deep, and if they're left unchecked for a long period of time, they can actually start to look more like this generalized anxiety disorder. And I would venture to say that there's probably a lot that are being diagnosed with that right now, and it may or may not be valid. I hope it's not as valid. I hope we're not killing ourselves off here in that way, but I think it is something that's very real. I'll say also about anxiety, we don't really know a lot about how it's truly caused or whatever. There's a lot of theories going on out there, but there's just as much about, can you bring it on yourself? Is it genetic? There's a lot of discourse about that to this day, and I don't know if we have really any kind of solid answers. But I want to talk through some of the other things that people can have. The panic thing is a big one for a lot of people, and it's because of these things right here. And the reason I bring this up is that this is something that I've been having a lot lately. And it's the difference is when it's circumstantial versus not anything based in reality. And this is where it gets so difficult. And this is why, again, I'm not here to diagnose. I'm not here to treat. I'm just here to say there's some differences between the people that are not able to fully control this, and people that are just in a circumstance or whatever where this is true. And these feelings of that oh my gosh, we're gonna die, whatever that looks like, being out of control. The heart palpitations are something that this is something that, but my wife had some worry about me recently. She was laying like right here, and got to hear firsthand what that's like for me during a period of anxiety. And it's terrifying, because the heart will just do weird things, and you will be like, oh my gosh, am I having a heart attack? It's like, what is going on? It's just like you can get that like palpitation, or sometimes it's just like this pound of a heartbeat. It's really rough, but that's that panic attack. That can be that. Now the difference is, does it go away? Can you calm yourself down? We talk a lot, and it kind of sometimes, unfortunately, has become kind of a joke because it's been overused. But a lot of times there is a genuine trigger. I've been around people in various circumstances long enough to realize that there's a difference between somebody who's genuinely triggered and someone who says they're triggered for attention. I wish I wasn't having to say these words, but I've been seeing enough of it in the last 4 or 5 years that it's starting to upset me a lot, because I've been around people that genuinely experience a trigger and cannot stop themselves. They have that level of panic attack, not, oh my gosh, oh, sorry, that was really bad. But I'm sorry, it's tiring for me, because I'm somebody who has actually worked in a psychiatric hospital. I've seen someone who's genuinely had a trigger event put them into a state of, genuine like shaking. There's a level that's beyond what we kind of just say these words as. And so the more we say these words, the more it actually ends up stigmatizing those that have these genuine conditions. And it makes me upset sometimes. So I want to be careful about this, but only to a degree. I'm sure I'm triggering somebody right now in that kind of emotional, offensive way. Being offended is not being triggered, all right? Well, let me say that again. Being offended is not being triggered. Being triggered, as far as a panic attack goes, is something very, very different, and we need to be appropriate with that. Otherwise, we are basically cheapening and dehumanizing the people that are genuinely having these disorders. So I'll get off my soapbox for a second here. So this whole thing right here is another thing that is really key to the disorder versus just being in an emotional state that is, somewhat temporary. People that are experiencing this are less likely to want to leave their home. They're less likely to want to go out. It says right here that it can often cause a compounding effect, like agoraphobia can come out of this, because you're just so concerned that if I'm in those situations, I might be triggered again and might go into this panic. And you know what? I don't want to introduce that to myself because there's no way I can control it. That's true panic anxiety disorder, right? That's what that really is. So if you know someone that is in these kind of situations, the best thing you can do is not push. There's I hate to say it this way, but when somebody is in that place, what they need is help. They don't need to be pushed to get better, that sort of thing. If it's this, they're just so afraid of going out because, X might happen, or they're just that much concerned that if they leave their house, they're going to die. Like if they have that kind of level of fear, I hate to say this, but the fear of going out and getting sick because you've left your house is nothing new. And that's something we've been dealing with, but we're seeing a lot more of that in the last 5-6 years, for sure. There's a lot of countries that are dealing with this in a lot bigger way than we are in America right here, where I'm from. But this is something that it's something that it's really difficult to know what to do. Ultimately, if you have someone that's in that situation and you don't know how to help them, the best thing you can do is to reach out to a professional, explain the situation, and get some advice on how to best approach that. And it's one of these reasons why this was often miscategorized as schizophrenia for so long, is because the responses can be similar. The difference between schizophrenia at a high level is that somebody who's experiencing schizophrenia is probably not going to be aware of who you are. In a lot of cases, that there's this level of paranoia. They will have dissociated completely. Reality doesn't really register completely, or just parts of it will. I'm overgeneralizing, but that's something that is tough. But I want to go into some of the other phobias just really quick, and it's not to misalign anything here, but just to know that a lot of times people have fears of certain things. I have a fear of heights, which is really funny because I've spent a lot of my life flying. Now, when it comes to a what we call a fear of heights, I wouldn't say I have a complete phobia of heights. I don't avoid it like I cannot be near it. It's one of the things where it's just an extreme discomfort. Like I have those thoughts of falling, and it does something to me physically. It's something I'm not comfortable with. My wife wanted to jump out of an airplane, and she wondered why I didn't want to go with her. It's because of that. I knew I couldn't deal with it. It was a bad day for me. It's a great day for her. She had a blast, but it wasn't a great day for me. But this can be wider. But the difference here is that if that fear is so intense that you will actually um, actively avoid other things as well, out of fear that might be bigger than what it is. And so that's a phobia that can be kind of lumped into this into anxiety. Um, Social anxiety is something that I've seen a lot of, and this is where I'm going to talk specifically to my friends in the IT and kind of geeky communities for a second. Uh, is that a lot of times I find that people with these kind of disorders will oftentimes find themselves in these careers more often than in like sales, for example. And so I'm not saying that we need to handle things with kitten gloves necessarily. That's an expression that means you're trying not to do anything to hurt them ever. But at the same time, it's good to recognize people's boundaries and recognize that a good many people that are in information technology won't know how to communicate with you because they are oftentimes dealing with some level of this social anxiety. And so there's a lot of times that this happens, and I'm uh, blessed to be kind of in between that, of being somewhere in between, being a little bit uncomfortable at times around crowds, but at the same time being able to push myself through it and do those kind of things. But there are those that I've encountered over the years that I can see, oh yeah, they've got a social anxiety disorder that's been either diagnosed or undiagnosed, and I'm not going to call them out on the rug about it. I'm going to treat them in such a way that builds them up instead of being disappointed in the way they interact with people. I hope that's clear. That it's not about you know, it. We say a lot about equality and things like that, but when it comes to these kind of things, we can't treat everyone the same way. But we want to. How do you articulate this? You still want people to be validated, and valued the same way. So it's a very the best way to value someone is to learn about them, learn who they are, and how to value them. Not just assume what's valuable for DJ is going to be valuable for you. I guess that's probably a better way to say that. That's the beauty of doing live, is that you just stumble on yourself all the time and try and recover. But bear with me. All right, so there's some other things that I'll say as far as the phobia thing, and I'm going to get into fear in general and why there's a difference between what we classify as fear sometimes and these genuine anxieties. So the fear of being in public places, that sort of things, being too open, being exposed, being too enclosed. There could be a lot of different ways to see this. There was an incident that was unfortunately made into news where someone didn't realize they had this kind of thing until the door locked on the plane, which is not the ideal time to need to get out and start yanking for the door, right? Well, probably less ideal, at 30,000 feet, but it's something that it's unfortunate, but it does happen. And sometimes that level of fear won't really come to the surface until it's way, way too late. And it becomes an issue. And so there are times when people don't realize they have these things until they're in that situation. So it can be, difficult. Fortunately, flight attendants are trained in dealing with this, believe it or not. This is a very common thing for them to be trained and kind of drill on. I don't know how regular. Somebody can maybe fill me in on that, of how regular those anxiety drills are. But it's one of those situations where when you think about it, it can be kind of intimidating to not be in control over that and not being able to get out. There's no options. If you're at 30,000 feet, you don't have options. And so you will get to if you're in this agoraphobic kind of thing, or a lot of other phobias that are kind of involved here, you can act irrationally. And so it's difficult for society sometimes to deal with that. And there's other things too, like separation anxiety disorders. Um, it's common, but not common. It's one of those that fortunately a lot of times can be dealt with, but also is something that can come up after the fact. I've I've known cases of separation anxiety that happened, 20, 30 years after an incident, something that, was a dream or a nightmare right here. So, um, yeah, so it's a lot of things can happen with that. And there's a lot of other, I don't know if I'm not going to take the time of all these things, but anyway, as far as the things to look out for and the ways to deal with this, um, so exposure to stressful situations can often either cause or trigger anxieties, and so it's important to recognize that and realize that this is something where I'm going to go. Let's change that for a second. I'm going to full screen it and say just you know I want to say this very clearly that if somebody is dealing with these kind of anxieties and these issues, it's not your duty to avoid triggering that. Okay. That's not fair to you as a human being. Now, yeah, there's the whole don't be a jerk thing. Don't go looking to trigger someone who's triggered. That's called being a horrible human being. But there's a level of, you can't just live your life in constant worry about triggering someone else. And this is where, again, the misuse of the word is becoming a hot button for me right now, is because it's causing a whole new kind of anxiety that's almost as bad as the anxieties that the people actually genuinely have. And that is the fear of, like, literally the fear of triggering someone. And I'm seeing this a lot where people are just too afraid to say anything or do anything because they're afraid of what it might do to someone else. So I don't think that's diagnosed yet, but I think we're getting there. So the honest truth is, you be who you are, be a genuine good person. This is my message to everyone. Leave the world better than you found it, right? Be a good person, but don't worry that you're being a good person is, you're gonna do things that you're gonna regret. It's gonna happen. It's just about not doing them on purpose. All right. If you're not doing it on purpose, then you're not at fault. Okay. It's not, something where if you repeatedly do something that is upsetting someone else or causing harm to someone else, yeah, that's different. But if you just happen to do something or say something off the hand, you know, this is it's driving me crazy about this whole cancel culture thing. If somebody can say something on a live video like I'm doing right now, and I'm probably going to say something right now, it's going to be like, who knows, 5 years from now, I'll be like, oh, well, DJ said this, blah, yeah, let's make sure that he's never successful ever again. Yeah, thanks. This is something that is ridiculous, but you can't live your life, you can't hide away for fear of that. And so that's what I'm going to say here is that, as far as the things that can be done to cause these things, it's more important to look out for these things in yourself in this kind of case. And I don't say things like that very often, but the reality is that if you aren't caring for yourself first, then there's no capability for you to leave the world better than you found it. Okay. There's no way for you to be that positive change if you aren't yourself taken care of. And so let's go over some of these again, just some of the quick risk factors and that sort of thing. Like I said, there's some back and forth as to whether that can be caused by your food intake, your environment, that sort of thing. Too much alcohol can cause this, apparently, that sort of thing. The caffeine thing is kind of interesting thing because I think it's something that can cause the palpitations, and I've experienced that, and sometimes those palpitations can trigger a anxiety event. I have had that happen. I had that happen a couple of weeks ago, where I was thinking about my financial situation, and I had had way too much coffee, and it made for a very, very, very bad day. So yeah, there's things like that. So, but anyway, there's also things like that can just be part of your family, that you've like literally inherited this either from genetically speaking or from a behavioral sense. I'm not really sure. Like I said, the jury's still really out on that. But that's something that can happen. But that's, again, we're talking about the anxiety that lasts more than 6 months. That bigger picture, not the I'm having a hard time with life. Okay, that's I want to be clear about that. I want to talk really quick about the ways to deal with this. Um, Getting on the couch and talking about it, psychotherapy is not uncommon here. It's been a it's a good treatment because what it does is basically confronts those fears from a mental or cognitive standpoint of saying, okay, we're going to reprogram things. And this is kind of one of my favorite things about the world of psychology that has always been attractive to me, as far as when it's used properly and not abused. But there is a level of growth that happens when you put yourself into discomfort at an appropriate level. I say often that here, I say this often enough that I'm pretty sure I have it up on my. Um, oh, maybe not. Huh. Okay, I thought I said this often enough that I have it up on my quick chat thing to put up on the screen. But the saying that I have is that you won't rise to the occasion. You'll only rise to your level of preparedness. And yeah, there it is. I did have it up there. So you will not rise to the occasion. You'll only rise to your level of preparedness. So what a lot of cognitive therapy is doing is conditioning the behavior to be able to handle more and more and more by taking control of how you're thinking about and feeling about situations. And so the best cognitive therapists that I've ever been around, known, or worked around are those that recognize that it's a long process of not saying, here, I'm just going to give you this pill and it'll fix it. It's more of like, let's work through the things that trigger you and get through there. And I said yesterday that this was part of the therapy process that I went through, of saying, let's look at what's real and what's a lie. And that's why I always say, oh, all you're saying is here, the fear is a liar. Fear is a liar. It is. And once you recognize that for the lie it is, then you can get beyond it. But you can't just do that all at once. You can't just snap your fingers and all of a sudden that fear is no longer there. It's not a problem anymore. That's not the way this works. You have to get yourself to those points. And so in terms of how this is dealt with professionally and how this is dealt with on a normal you and I kind of a basis, this is exactly how I deal with this. If I'm feeling anxious about a situation, I will get into the nuts and bolts of this and say, okay, what's some ways I can kind of deconstruct this a little bit? Let's talk about finances. Actually, I was talking about this with my the co-host on my my other channel a little bit today, and was kind of expressing things to him, so I can express them to you too. That I have had anxiety about finances this year because I've made some business decisions that haven't gone like I thought they were going to go. I missed some things, and it's caused this whole stream of things that's been exacerbated by some depression I've been dealing with. But as far as the anxiety part of that, yeah, when you look at those, if you've been using your credit cards and you look at those bills, it can cause a bit of anxiety. Now, what can happen with that is one of two things. You can say, you know what, this is something that I can deal with, even if I'm not dealing with it right now, even if I can't deal with it like right away, I can deal with this. Or you can go the other direction and say, this is going to crush and kill me. And as much as I love the whole, my fellow Franklin, Tennessee mentor type person, Dave Ramsey, as much as I love the way he approaches, our feelings about personal debt, there's an extreme there that I think is maybe not always completely healthy, in that, yeah, it's good to hate debt and it's not good to stay under that. At the same time, it's not good to let that be something where it becomes something that you think that, bill collectors are coming out your door right now. Now, if they are, yeah, it's time to start raising that level of discomfort a bit and getting through this. But if you're not in peril, and this is where if you listen to Dave Ramsey, you'll hear that, he says, nail this down appropriately and say, the first thing to take care of is your food and your shelter. That's the first things first. Everything else, come at me, bro. That's appropriate. So that's a way to deal with the anxiety by giving it categories of saying, okay, we're going to break this overall fear into what it is. Am I afraid that I'm going to lose my house? Maybe. Am I afraid I'm going to lose my car? Maybe. Which is worse? Well, gosh, my car is, just something, it's a car, especially these days. I'd be more afraid of losing my internet access on my car at this point. But please don't let that, be an anxiety point for anybody. But what I'm saying is that you break it down a little bit and say, okay, where's the bigger fears and where's the things that I need to be more concerned about, not afraid of, concerned about getting fixed. That's what essentially, when you break it down, that's what this therapy is essentially doing, by breaking it into smaller bits that you can actually kind of reframe the conversation in your own head. Okay, that's basically what that amounts to. And I'm going to put this up on the screen just because, just full disclosure that, it's not uncommon to have people under medication for this. How to say this appropriately. There's no appropriate way to say this. I'm just going to tell you my experience. This is why I left psychology. I saw this being done more than trying to help people. I saw pharmaceutical companies influencing this far too much for things like this, where it was just easier to get approval from like insurance companies and things like that to do a pill than it was for therapy. Yeah, this is another soapbox thing with me. Can you tell I'm passionate about this? Can you tell that's something I can get upset about? This is one of those areas where instead of, wanting to genuinely help people and equip them for a better future, we just hand them a pill. And insurance companies are not helping. I'm sorry to say that there's because it's hard to demonstrate a result or be able to give this as a specific diagnosis. Medication tends to be, unfortunately, it tends to be the first thing people go towards, which I find personally to be an enormous mistake. Now, that being said, again, the vast majority of people that deal with anxiety are dealing with either episodes or temporary anxiety, not a disorder. Okay, so that is something where that's the other reason why I find it a little bit disheartening that medication tends to be handed out like it does. But I'm not saying that's always true. And if you are somebody that's in the psychology field and can correct me or whatever, feel free. But generally speaking, 20 years ago, that's what I saw. That's why I left, moved on. I'd much rather be a coach and help people in that way than be part of that system, is what I decided. So that's where we're at. But there are, the medications have changed quite a bit. It's not as, it used to be basically just you were a drooling mess for a lot of the medications that were given out for anxiety, because they were the same things that were given out for schizophrenia. So that has changed. We're not seeing people given like straight up tranquilizers as much anymore, but a lot of times these drugs can be good and bad, especially if you are somebody who is dealing with both anxiety and depression, which is not uncommon at all. And so these and again, this is another area of debate still today, especially when it comes to MAOIs. This actually did, it's to say that I've had some personal experiences and exposure to this, that it can be bad to do in an unsupervised kind of way. But that depends on the situation a lot of times. But anyway, it's really anxiety and depression at a certain level really can need medication to be dealt with. That is literally true, and so I don't want to minimize that at any way, any stretch. I know of people that are living normal lives because of the medication they're taking, because they're whatever it is. I don't know if it's genetics or whatever it is, but basically it gets to a point where that's the only way to really deal with it and live a normal life. And praise God for that. All right, that's awesome that they can actually do that. And there's other things too that have been like the beta blockers and things like that. There's even some supposed over-the-counter stuff for dealing with this too. I'm not going to speak to that again. My goal is not to do that. That's something for a doctor to do in that kind of way. But what I will say is that support groups and stress management techniques are very much things that I'm very supportive of, and I've seen a lot of breakthrough in. And so I'm very supportive of those. It sounds weird to say that people with anxiety can help other people with anxiety, but the reality is there's nothing like exposing fear for the lie it is when you see it in others, and then you start seeing it in yourself and going, wait a minute. If they're being lied to, I'm being lied to. It's all a lie. Sorry, I've been watching too much Friends. I'm going the full-on Chandler. I apologize, but seriously though, it is something where they're, like I said, I get fired up about this because people have heard me say this over and over again. I believe fully, because it is something that is been true in my life, that there are forces that are beyond this world. There are forces that are just apparent, and they're not all good. Some are evil, and the evil ones really do seem to have patterns, and this is one of them. If they can convince you that the truth is not true, or that the truth is being twisted, that's what causes these things. And the reason I say that is because these are the fruits, right? Anxiety is the fruit of fear. And I'm just going to say this again, and I know this is a very public, and some people are it's like, DJ, I wouldn't have said that in a public setting like this. I would have waited, or whatever. But here's the thing. A couple of months ago, I heard this word, this sense from God, asking me to go through the Bible and find whenever the word fear was used, and do this in a couple different translations. And I don't have it right in front of me. I apologize. I didn't do good research or prep for this. But if I'm remembering the number correctly in the translations that I read, it's about 160 times that the word fear is used, something like that. I'm probably misquoting that. But here's the thing. There's a pattern that I saw out of that. And that pattern was that we're never told to fear anything except God. Well, deconstruct that a little bit. A lot of times people will take that out of context and say, oh yeah, God's just a big bad meanie up there, and he's just telling you to fear him, and and he's just he's a jealous God, so he's not, all he wants to do is have you fearful of him and that sort of thing, and he's just going to punish you for anything wrong you do. Here's the thing. The same God that said that you should reserve any fear you have for him alone, and is jealous of that, is the same God that sent his son to die for you. And I know, like I said, I'm probably overextending myself here a little bit, but from a practical standpoint, when it comes to looking at things like anxiety, I can't help but say, what happens when we play things forward? What happens when I play our fears forward? It's one result or the other, right? It's either a good result or a bad result. And this is why I can't escape these realities, is because it's like, well, if I play the fear part of it forward, or in this case, I guess you could say it's a regression, like backwards in one case, or in most cases, the outcome is not good. The outcome is just more bad. if I play the fear thing of fear of just God, who has done these other things and has got my goodwill for me and gives me instructions and does all these things to help me along the path, what does that look like? Well, it's a lot better. So what I'm saying to you is that it's not on you to worry about these things. Is that the fear should be reserved for something, just one thing. That's freeing to me. That's something that's freeing to me. So if you're watching this and you're somehow offended by that or whatever, I can't control that. I can't control what you're offended by. All I'm saying is that this is something that's been very true in my life, and that I've come to realize over the last few months that I need to do more of that. I need to do more of what's leading me forward in my life, not what keeps me back. And so what you're going to be seeing from me in the next few months is more of that. I'm not abandoning everything else. I'm still going to be doing a lot of other stuff. I'm still, very much interested in helping people with their tech careers and things like that. But what I'm saying is that you're going to be seeing a lot of more of addressing things like this, because I very much believe that we have some problems in our world and our society that aren't going to be addressed by just simply being people that hide. So you're going to be seeing more of that, and you're going to be seeing more of me trying to encourage a specific group of people, in entrepreneurs specifically, that I believe are uniquely positioned to be helpful and be exposed to people in a very positive way that others might not be. And so you're going to be seeing a lot more of me encouraging those kind of people too, because I think that the, the very people that can learn to deal with a level of anxiety, and let me tell you, being an entrepreneur, working for yourself and not having that safety net, you want to see some anxiety happening back and forth on a daily or weekly basis. Yeah, that'd be one of them. That's something that can be definitely, as an emotion, very much there. You don't want to make it into a condition, but as an emotion, that anxiety is very much there. And so I think if I can help people like even myself in it's like group therapy kind of thing. It's like a managing that stress as a whole. The more I can do that, the more I think that we'll lift everyone else up. So if you have any questions about that, if that's anything that you want to talk more about, feel free to reach out to me privately. You can even go to my website and arrange for some time to talk with me. I believe it's still up. It's been having some issues lately, so who knows? But just djeshelman.com is where to go for that. You can schedule time to meet with me, and I'm happy to do that. I just have that in my calendar to where there's certain times of the day that if it's available, I'm happy to meet with somebody. So feel free to do that if that's something that you want to talk to me about. I'm absolutely very much willing to have that conversation, either as a coach or just somebody as just wanting to connect and to encourage you. So it's worth me spending 40 minutes out of my day to encourage you. Okay, just like I'm doing right now. So anyway, that's what I wanted to say today. So thanks for being with us, or me anyway. Yes, the royal we, the us. Have a great day. Remember, it is Mental Illness Awareness Week, and I'll put that link up one more time. So there's a lot of resources out there, but we want to do these things to confront this a little bit and say, you know what, there are these conditions out there. It doesn't make you less of a human being. You are, not a condition. You are a person with a condition. That's just the way this works. And so the more we can do to destigmatize that, the better off we're all going to be. And so that's my encouragement for you to get involved this week, just like I am, or even better. I think you can do better than I can. I honestly do. But anyway, that's where we're at this week. So I will be talking tomorrow a little bit more about some of the other things that are maybe more common that I've seen a lot of. I don't know how much we're going to talk about things like schizophrenia and things like that, but I do want to get into talking about bipolar, or what we used to call manic depressive. I want to talk about manic. I want to talk a little bit more about depression, and we're going to get into some of the other experiences and stories and things like that, and we'll get into that tomorrow. So 12:30 Central Time. So whatever that translates for you, we'll be back on all these channels tomorrow at that time. Have a great day. Love you all.